Welcome to Sustainable Sculpting with Eco-Friendly Mold Making. This is Chapter 2, Agar Mold Making, Alginate Alternative. I'm Emily Blythe-Jones. I will demonstrate how I make an agar mold using minimal materials and techniques to replicate traditional alginate body casting methods. This recipe is adapted from a book called The Materials and Methods of Sculpture by Jack C. Rich, originally published in 1947. In this text, he references several techniques and recipes for working with agar to make a suitable body casting material. Agar is an edible jelly-like substance obtained from red algae and discovered in Japan in 1658. It is commonly used to grow microbes in the study of microbiology, as it can tolerate temperatures close to those of the human body, which also makes it great for body casting. Agar has a melting temperature of 175 degrees Fahrenheit, higher than that of gelatin. Once it has been melted initially, it begins solidifying at around 115 degrees Fahrenheit and reaches solid at around 90 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. It can be remelted repeatedly either on the stovetop or preferably by the low and slow melting of a microwave. I'll be demonstrating an adapted and simplified recipe based on Rich's book that functions very similarly to traditional alginate, but in a formulation that can be reused and recycled. The recipe that I have adapted is as follows: 6 cups of water, 2/3 a cup of powdered agar, 2 tablespoons of zinc oxide, and 1 cup of dry paper pulp. Add 6 cups of water to a non-stick pot and add 2/3 a cup of powdered agar. Set your burner to medium heat and begin stirring continuously. Continue stirring the agar until it reaches 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Agar must be boiled in order for it to become gelatinous. Once the mixture reaches 212 degrees Fahrenheit, turn off the burner. Zinc oxide is used as an ingredient in products such as baby powder and sunscreen. For material science applications, zinc oxide has high refractive index, high thermal conductivity, binding, antibacterial, and UV protection properties. It is added into materials and products including ceramics, glass, paints, ointments, sealants, pigments, and even foods. Wearing gloves, add 2 tablespoons of zinc oxide. Stir the zinc oxide into the agar until it is fully incorporated. Here I pulled a cup of the mixture to put to the side to compare the consistency of the mixture both with and without paper pulp. To thicken the material for body casting, add about a cup of Cellucotton, paper pulp, or another clean fiber. I used paper pulp from Laguna clay. They sell it for the purpose of making their paper clay. Thoroughly stir the paper pulp fully into the agar. This will also begin bringing down the temperature. The agar will not begin to gel until it reaches around 115 degrees Fahrenheit, making it ideal for applications where heat sensitivity is an issue. Once it is cooled, slowly pour the mixture over your master or pattern. Here I'm pouring it over succulent leaves in a heat-safe container. The thinner mixture I reserved with the omitted paper pulp is perfect for pouring over vegetation that would otherwise be scalded or cooked by the glycerin gelatin mold-making material I alternatively use. I paused in the demolding of the succulent leaves long enough to take this photo. You can see some ice crystals forming on the surface as I had just removed it from the freezer. I sculpt with monster clay and typically melt it to a molten state for pouring into molds, using my microwave. Monster clay is an oil clay wax hybrid with great plastic qualities. Monster clay makers recommend not heating it above 134.6 degrees, which is cool enough to add to the agar molds, which melt at 175 degrees. Take great care when handling this molten material. If you find that it is too hot after microwaving, I'd recommend waiting until it is cooled down before casting with it. In the meantime, I test using some of the cooled down clay on the sides of the container as a press mold. The thermometer reads 131 degrees for the cooled down clay. The press mold resulted in good form, but there were some surface flaws I wasn't thrilled with. I poured a bit of the molten clay into the mold as well after the temperature went down to around 165 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. This had much more promising results, but there were some lap lines. Lap lines can occur when molten clay or wax cools during the casting process as it is poured into a cold mold. They might happen if you pause or go too slow during a pour. When using the agar composite for body casting purposes, it's important to consider that 120 degrees Fahrenheit is regarded as the maximum safe to touch temperature for up to 5 seconds. Allowing the agar composite to cool to at least 120 degrees Fahrenheit before applying it to the skin is an important step. Applying a thinner gel coat or beauty coat and allowing it to cool before adding more material will also prevent burning and maintain surface detail. Using the previously prepared mixture with paper pulp, I roughly applied it over my hand to do a quick test of its body casting properties. At around 115 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, it is comfortable to apply to the skin. I set my hand with the mixture down into a recycled takeout lid to let it cool for about 5 minutes before slowly wiggling out my hand. I stuck both molds into the freezer to cool them down and melted some monster clay. The freezer helped lower the temperature of the agar mold enough to combat the higher temperature of the melted monster clay. I was very pleased with the results of these experimental castings.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Yeah!
To demold embedded objects, I'd usually use a zigzagged cut with an X-Acto blade, but instead wiggled it out, knowing it would only be used for one casting.
Oh! Hot damn.
I'm pretty thrilled with these results, but there are some tips and tricks that can be applied from traditional alginate body casting. Based on these preliminary tests, it seems the material functions best when used as an open face or one-part block mold that can either be demolded without considering major undercuts, or that can be cut neatly with an X-Acto blade. The material feels and behaves similarly to traditional alginate in many ways. It is less rubbery and elastic than the glycerin gelatin mold-making material, and will tend to crumble or break rather than bending. When you're done with the mold, you can store it in an airtight container in your refrigerator, or break it down to recycle it for future uses. Melt it down again on your stovetop, or just be impatient and melt it down instead in your microwave using low heat for a long period, checking and stirring intermittently. If your mixture has reached 175 degrees and is still chunky, you can add a few quarter cups of hot water at a time while heating and stirring without degrading the qualities of the agar. Once it has been thoroughly melted to a creamy yogurt consistency, stir consistently as it cools back down to 115 to 120 degrees before applying it to your skin. And last but not least, I wanted to show you what the agar looks like when all the moisture evaporates. A super neat bioplastic sheet that feels a lot like paper and acetate had a baby. There is so much potential for this material. As of March 2021, I am just beginning to research the possibilities for this material and comparing it and documenting its compatibility with what can be cast into it. I will be updating a linked PDF instructional and a compatibility chart as new discoveries come to light. Additionally, I would enthusiastically welcome comments, questions, and feedback on this technique, and am seeking collaborative opportunities with people who want to share their own discoveries with eco-friendly mold making. Please feel free to reach out via email or social media. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, by email, or by visiting my website. Thank you so much for watching.